This is the second video for Chapter 5, and the way we left the end of the first video was playing some keys that were not working the way we wanted them to. So let's revisit that just for a second. I'm going to go ahead and place a couple keys, and when we ran this and we press the G key, the G key on the keyboard controlled all three of these keys on the piano. And what we want to do is we want to rectify that in this video. So let me go ahead and pause that, and let me go back into the key code. And basically what we want to do is to build a constructor or a key constructor, and do this in such a way that every time a key is placed on the surface of the world, either by right-clicking the class and dragging it over, or by using an add object in a piano constructor, every time this constructor is executed, that we will have it contain its own key and sound information. So to do this, we're going to need a couple of variables. One's going to be a string variable. Actually, both of them will be. And we're going to call this key. And sound. The purpose of these two is to store a specific keyboard key, like G, H, F, J, like we talked about before, and it'll be stored in double quotes, making it qualify as a string. And then we're also going to store a name for a sound file, and those were the sound files that we saw in the sound subfolder of the Greenfoot scenario. So we need to be able to store something separately for each such key that's created. So let's go ahead and build our constructor. And again, the way you build a constructor is to use the same name as the class. Spell it exactly the same way. And then put in the particular code that we need. Now, one of the problems that we were having is that every key that we created without a constructor pretty much was the G key. So we're going to need to have some parameters, and these parameters are going to help us create 88 keys, or however many white keys we're going to be using, each with their own keystroke value and their own wave file. So we're going to need to have two strings. One we'll call key name, and the other one we'll call sound file. And what happens when we add a new key, again by dragging it onto the surface of the world, or by having an add object in the piano constructor, what happens is that we will provide two pieces of information, and one will be this string and the other will be this string here. And what happens is that this constructor is called, and those two pieces of information are brought into the constructor. So what we want to do is to take what's passed, these two values, and store them into our private area here. So key name is going to be moved into our key value, and our sound file that's going to be provided or passed is going to be stored in our sound private variable. So it's very simple to do this. We have an assignment statement. And that, as simple as it looks, is what's going to get us out of our trouble and make it a little bit easier for us to control each of these individual keys. Now, I'm going to go ahead and compile this. Hopefully it's going to work. Looks like no syntax errors. And we're going to need to make a couple more changes, but let's go back to the surface here and let's do a compile all. And when I right click, notice that no longer does it say new key with no parameters, but now it has these two strings that I pretty much created on my own. So let me go ahead and choose that. And we'll put one in here. Let's try that again. Oh, that's right. We can only do this one at a time, I believe. There we go. It's a little bit different than what we were doing before because we had those two parameters, and we have to fill this information out for each such key that we drop onto the surface here. So let's see. We need a key name. We need a sound file. So I'm just going to arbitrarily say the G key is going to be used. And remember, these were both strings. So what a string means is that you have to have them in double quotation marks. And I'm going to use the 3A wave file. So there's one key. And let's go and do this one more time. New key. So I'm going to go ahead and click. And up comes the create object window. And this time I'm going to make it a G key. And I'll use this, I'll have this as a 3B wave file. Now I'm just arbitrarily picking the 3A and 3B for the G and the, I'm sorry, this should be H. There we go. I'm arbitrarily picking the 3A and 3B wave file to be associated with the G and the H key. So now let's right click on this object and let's inspect the variables and see what we're looking at. We have our is down, we have our X and Y locations of where the key is going to be placed. Rotation does make sense, but look at our two new private variables. So one represents, this key has represented a G in the 3A wave, and the one right next to it under the inspect window is the H key in the 3B wave. So notice they've stored their private information, the G and the H, and the two wave files basically inside themselves if you want to think about it. But watch what happens when I run this. I'm going to hit the G key and I'll hold it down. So even though they stored their own information, something has happened here. Let me go ahead and press the H key. And by pressing the H key, nothing happens. And let's go back into our code and find out exactly why this was. So this is working fine. We just saw it by dragging a couple keys and storing the pertinent information for each key. But when I went to run the act method, look what we found. We found that it only responds to a G key and that it only plays the 3A wave sound. And if you're at home, you'll be able to hear that. We can't hear with my recording software. But what I've done is I've built in some generality, but then I've wasted it because I'm hard coding in some values. So what we really want to do here is to make use of these private variables. So what I want to do is that whenever the act method runs, that it's checking for a generic key. So here it's going to be checking for however many white keys I have on on the surface of the world. And so likewise we want to put key there. And likewise here we want to change that to be our sound. And we don't need double quotations around it because these are variables that contain these string values. And as long as I haven't changed anything else here, I think we're ready to go. Let me try a compile. No syntax errors. And let's do a compile all. And this is kind of awkward, where we have to go and put this information each time, but the next thing we're going to do is to use add objects so we don't have to do this. So 3a.wave file, and I certainly don't like doing this very often. And this would be the H key. And then we'll have 3b wave file. And let's run this. And now I'm going to press the G key, and it's just pressing and playing the 1 key, and now I'll try the H. And so I think I've got a working model here. This is looking a lot better. So the last thing I want to do is I want to go into the piano constructor like we've done in previous chapter and create a piano constructor so that we can do those add objects on our own. So let me go ahead and open up the editor for the piano class. And sure enough, there's the piano constructor that's always there. And what we want to do is to do a populate keys method. And again, be careful where you put this. Don't want to accidentally have it hanging halfway in one method and halfway in another one. So this is going to be the populate keys method. Open brace, close brace. And then we use the add object that belongs to the world class, so we've done this a lot. And I want to do a new key. That's going to be a G. And again, I'm arbitrarily picking this sound file. So you might want to refer to the text to get the proper keys associated with the proper files. So that's what I'm going to add. I'm going to add a new key. Remember the parameters? We created 2 parameters, so when we are creating and passing a key object, we need to have those 2 parameters filled with specific values, and that's how they get stored in that key variable and that sound variable that we saw earlier. And then we're going to put it at X location 300, Y location 180. And we'll do an H key. And I'll do a 3B wave, again kind of arbitrarily. Now we happen to know that the width, let me go ahead and type this in here, the width of a key is 63 units, maybe pixels. So if we put our second key at 300 plus 63, hopefully it'll be right next door and we'll have it the same height from the top. This can get very laborsome, having to type in all of these things, but the next topic will be arrays, and I'll choose F here. And arrays are wonderful things in that they save us from having to type in 88 different keys. We can pull a little bit of array technology and a little bit of array trickery to make our lives a little bit easier. And then this one I want to be twice that width, so that's 126 if my math is coming out at all. And I believe we're real close to having this thing run. So let's do a compile. Cannot find class key. That's probably because it needs to be uppercase. Is that right? Let me try it. And let's try a compile again. No syntax errors, so I could remember whether I had an uppercase on there or not, but it seems like I remember that one of the rules is you uppercase the name of a class, so I should have known that. And we'll do a compile all, which is what we did already, and then we'll do a run, and then we'll do a G key, H again, and then F. And again, if you're at home doing this, you should be able to hear the 3A, the 3B, and the 3C notes. So I'm going to talk about the arrays in the third video, but it looks like we've got the promise of a piano happening right here.